Welcome back, viewer, to another one of these videos. I put a poll out a few weeks ago and 4 whole people said they wanted to see more. They say key to any successful YouTube channel is to have a strong core audience, so your wish is my command. Speaking of audience, on Tuesday last week I crossed over to 500 subscribers. Why 500 people have taken their time out to watch this nonsense, I don't know, but thank you. And without that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix. Oh, wasn't a classic by any means, was it? There's still a few interesting topics I think we can discuss. So prior to the weekend, I put my car pace predictions out on X. I hate saying that, should be Twitter. Sort it out, Elon. Some of the predictions already look a little bit wrong, but I want to focus on Alpine. So I put them down as 7th in between Williams and RB. See how that goes. I said just not feeling them this year, and oh boy howdy was I right. A back row lockout for a team which picked up a podium last year, had a win a few years ago, and going back to 2005-2006, let's not forget this is the Works Renault team, they were winning world championships. So what on earth is happening with Alpine? I don't know, but before I started recording, I'd seen that they have basically sacked their technical team. I haven't got the details because it's literally just happened. I was looking at my phone while I was making a coffee. Even last year, they didn't really seem to jump out all that much. Of course, yeah, they got that podium at Monaco, but apart from that, they were miles away from anyone else. They were nowhere near getting up to Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, Ferrari territory. And then again, they were quite a fair bit ahead of the then AlphaTauri team, Sauber, Williams, just plodding along in at their own pace. Others knocked out Q1 were Sargent and the Saubers. No major shocks there, must say. Do like the look of those Saubers. You know, the electric lime green colour they've got going. It's a strong colour. I reckon you can make a brand out of that kind of colour. Into Q2, and Sonoda has outqualified Daniel Ricciardo again. Now I want to talk about them a little bit more later in the video because we all know how the race ended and how that relationship's going. So I'll keep my cards close to my chest on that one and get to that discussion for the end of the race area. Into Q3, which I was pretty excited for, I must say. Ferrari seeming a lot closer to Red Bull. What could Mercedes do? They've been giving good talk. No. Bigging themselves up, you know what I mean. But I don't think anyone was then too surprised when Verstappen takes the first blood in the first runs of Q3. Leclerc only a 10th behind, but on used tyres, so again, still promising. But then in the final runs, Max gets a mega slipstream of Piastri to start his final flying lap, goes on pole by 2 tenths. So, you know, game on, I think. It definitely looks as if they were Ferrari a lot closer, bridged the gap. Also doing well in Q3 was Hülkenberg. What was he, 6th in Q2 or something? Way outpacing Magnussen, who I think might be in a little bit of trouble, perhaps, with the driver market all being shaken up for 2025. But we shall see, won't we? As I think there's a lot bigger moves that will be happening. Into the actual race itself. Now, I do quite like Bahrain. I think it's one of the best Hermann Tilke circuits. It's its 20th anniversary. But let's just go through the race step by step, shall we? It was a clean start. Max and Leclerc both getting away well on the front row. It looks as if Leclerc was going to go around the outside of Max, but no way. Max is allowing that. Shuts the door. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fair. But yeah, claiming P1 for himself. No chance Leclerc coming back through. Further at the back, you have Hülkenberg nerfing Stroll, which is a big shame for Hülkenberg. It looks as if there was going to be points on for Haas in the race, but never mind. Both of those end up at the back. Stroll actually has he divides opinion, Lance Stroll, doesn't he? I think he's very good in the wets. He has the odd day where all the promise and potential shines through. Obviously, there's no debating that he's maintaining his seat in F1 because his dad owns the team. so he ain't getting sacked anytime soon. But today, ambulance. But on the weekend, very strong performance from Stroll, going to the back after turn 1 and eventually finishes in the point. So good drive from Lance Stroll. Although I think, as I think many other people would like, someone else in the car, a certain Brazilian perhaps. Speaking of Stroll, his teammate Fernando Alonso, who I don't believe will be retiring despite the rumours. I think that's just he's saying that he's going to decide his future in the next few races if he wants to continue. I think that's just a very clear message to Mercedes, isn't it? Saying, this is your one chance to sign me. Here we go. Sign me up. Let's go. He's a wind-up merchant, isn't he, Alonso? He knows what he's doing. He's always up to something. Anyway, Alonso passes. Norris passes Alonso, and then Piastri a couple of laps later. Aston Martin, they had so much promise at the start of last year and just, for whatever reason, seem to have taken a back step and haven't been able to make that leap ahead once more and really struggled for pace in this race. Easily dispatched by both the McLarens, and Alonso would struggle with race pace throughout the rest of the race. So Max runs and hides as he often does, and we have a bit of a DRS train with Russell down to Sainz in 5th. Perez passes Leclerc on lap 7, and the issues for the Ferrari quickly became apparent. Charles Leclerc was having some kind of brake issue where he just didn't have any confidence on the brakes. That's tight hairpin, turn 10. Is it turn 10? International circuit. It is turn 10. How about that? So in the first 10 laps or so, I think Leclerc locked up and ran wide 3 times going into that turn 10 hairpin. He asked the team what was the issue, and altogether now, copy, we are checking. I don't think he ever really got much of an answer to what was causing those issues. So yeah, Leclerc was struggling, and Carlos Sainz passes him on lap 11th, and bravo Carlos Sainz. It would have been very easy for his head to drop. Of course, he's been kicked out of Ferrari for next year. When Vettel was let go over the winter, well, the extended winter, because it was the first COVID season, wasn't it? His performance just went out the window. Carlos Sainz, there seems to have lit a fire under his arse and is looking very strong based off just this one race so far. So hopefully he can continue that going forward. And this is when Ferrari makes their first mistake of the season. So Sainz passes Leclerc. Sainz clearly having the pace over his Monegasque teammate, but yet Ferrari decide to pit Leclerc first. Leclerc's in-lap was lap 11, so the lap of his pit stop was lap 12. Sainz doesn't then pit for a couple of laps later, 14 going into 15, and this is where I believe that Carlos Sainz's chance for runner-up and the winner, sans Max Verstappen, was taken away from him. What side did I have things popping up last time? Was it over here or over here? I can't remember. On it, somewhere over here, you're going to see Charles Leclerc's lap times preceding his first stop. So his times go from a 37.8 just before he stops to 36.4, 36.7, and 36.8. So, and this was the laps before Carlos then made his stop. So that's essentially the time that Carlos would have then lost, which comes to just over 3 seconds. He finished 2.5 seconds behind Perez. So well done, Ferrari. That's already 3 points down the Italian sink. On these fresh tyres, though, Sainz passes Leclerc again on lap 17 with I've written a mad dive bomb here. I think we can all agree on that. And then the lap after, he also passes George Russell. So on lap 18, Carlos Sainz is up to 3rd, and he would hold this position until the end of the race and wins himself the driver of the day. Very well deserved, in my opinion. So now he's in the driver shop window after Hamilton taking his seat. And you can't really blame Ferrari on that one. They make poor choices, but I think on this one, Hamilton-Ferrari, people have been wanting that one for literally a decade now, and they're hardly going to get rid of Charles Leclerc anytime soon. He's their golden boy. Went through the Ferrari system. He's very loyal to them. He said something along the lines of, "If I could win a world championship, I want to win it for Ferrari." So he's not interested in going anywhere else. So Carlos has found himself in the right place just at the wrong time, which is very sad. I mean, he only got one win last season, but that's one win more than Leclerc did. And I hope he gets himself a good drive for next season. I don't see the Ferrari Mercedes switch. It's too far fetched. So Hamilton goes to Ferrari, and then Sainz goes over to Mercedes potentially, or he could rejoin up with Red Bull. He started off his career back there. Excuse me. He started his career back there with Toro Rosso in 2015. Yeah, it was Max's teammate, wasn't he? And it's not uncalled for. It's not unheard of for Red Bull to get drivers back again. I think they must have signed Danny Kvyat at least 3 or 4 times. They got Brendan Hartley back in after they brought him through the ranks. He then left them and brought him back again. So it's not out of the question. So that's a question I'm going to put to you people watching. Where would you like to see Carlos end up next year? Do comment down below. That's what the tubers do, don't they? Get me some of that sweet engagement. That's what YouTube likes. Maybe he could go to Aston if Alonso's shenanigans pay off and he ends up getting that Mercedes seat after all. So who knows? Hey, speaking of Mercedes, they don't like those baking hot desert temperatures, do they? And when I say Mercedes, I don't just mean the big boy Silver Arrows team. I mean every team with Mercedes engines was struggling with overheating. I think it was one of the Williams. I think it was Albon, I want to say, where they had an onboard shot of him and it just shows car too hot, cool car down, something along those lines, just flashing up constantly on his little display on his steering wheel. So yes, they're in the desert. Deserts get hot. What's the issue there though? It was unseasonably cold in Bahrain this year. It was maxing out about 18 degrees Celsius, which is a very worrying sign for all Mercedes power unit teams if they're already getting overheating issues. I mean, what are they going to do when we go to when we move into the summer months? What happens when we go to altitude like Mexico City, where cooling is significantly less efficient with just air going over it? I mean, if anything, I would have expected the Red Bulls to potentially have heating issues with their massive undercut side pods with the little air hole slits and the bunny ears. I don't like bunny ears. I think we should think of a better name for them. But yeah, it's just odds that Mercedes are finally suddenly finding themselves with these issues at a relatively cold race. And next week we've got Saudi Arabia, we've got Jeddah, where it's predicted to be mid to high 20s. So if they're already struggling, what does that mean for the rest of the season? If they've got more pace in the car, they're going to have to sort out these issues if they want to get any serious results going forward. Into the second half of the race, I've written very little happened. Leclerc closed into George Russell and ironically got the place off Georgie Boy when the Mercedes driver locked up and ran wide at turn 10. That's Leclerc's calling card for 2024, but no, it played to his advantage this time. I managed to get ahead. So really the main story for the end of the race was, could Carlos Sainz catch Sergio Perez? So Sainz running in third on hard tyres, Perez running in second on soft tyres. So would the softs fall off? At what point would the hards become good, go faster than the softs? Ferrari being Ferrari, didn't know. And it turns out that in terms of relative pace, there was never really a crossover between the softs and the hards. Sainz spent the last 20 laps or so between 2 to 4 seconds behind, never really getting any closer than that. And like I said earlier, that's mainly due to Ferrari's bungling of the first round of pit stops. They should have brought Sainz in first, so he could have got those fast laps earlier than others around him. Now the other story was, as I threatened earlier, was with the RBs, the Visa Cash App rubbish named cars. Tsunoda outqualified Ricciardo. Tsunoda was running ahead of Ricciardo all race, catching Magnussen for 11th. Was it 11th? No. Joe finished 11th. It must have been 12th. Yeah, Tsunoda catching Magnussen for 12th. Ricciardo behind Tsunoda in 14th. When the call came for them to change places, Tsunoda reluctantly allowed the Honey Badger past. And usually what happens in these situations is if car A has let car B behind to pass the car ahead, if car B does not get past, it's then customary to then switch the places back again for the end of the race, which did not happen, and that worries me. So since Ricciardo has come back, I've found him not as good as Tsunoda, in my opinion. I know Daniel Ricciardo is a fan favourite. Everyone loves Daniel Ricciardo. I don't mind Daniel Ricciardo at all. I think he's a very, very good driver when he's in his Red Bull days, winning those races, putting pressure onto Mercedes. But I don't think people are expecting Sainz to I don't think people are expecting Perez to be re-signed for the next Red Bull during the next contract negotiations with Red Bull, which means there's going to be that coveted seat next to Max. And honestly, I believe that Tsunoda should fill that place. He's been with the team for 4 years now? 5 years? 4 years? And a lot of those early mistakes that he'd made in the early days seem to have gone completely, and I think he's quite a good, rapid driver now. You know, he outscored Ricciardo in the races that they were both in. I know, obviously, you had De Vries and Lawson in the second AlphaTauri seat for a lot of the season, but in the races where it was just Tsunoda and Ricciardo, Tsunoda outpaced him. Ricciardo had that one good race in Brazil. But it worries me if they're going to show favouritism to Ricciardo, because that seems to suggest that they're going to be placing him ahead of Tsunoda in an equal-ish situation. There are some children surrounding my car. Get away. What was I talking about? RBs. Yeah, Tsunoda. I think Tsunoda would be a better choice for Red Bull. I mean, if I were Christian Horner... Naughty. Not getting into that. I would choose Tsunoda over Ricciardo because I think Tsunoda can learn off Max. I think if Ricciardo came into Red Bull, he'd be trying to usurp Max in being the big boy Red Bull driver, which I don't think necessarily is what Red Bull would want. I think they'd want someone to support Max, and I think Yuki would be a better choice for that, but that's just my opinion. Speaking of Max, he won the race by 22.5 seconds, which is the largest ever win at the Bahrain Grand Prix, beating out Alonso's 2010 victory, where he won by 16.1 seconds. Well, that was an utter stinker race, wasn't it, 2010, if you remember that far back. Overall, I'd say this race wasn't too much better. 3.5 out of 10 I've given it. Max dominated, got himself the Grand Slam, which, if you don't know, is the pole position, race win, fastest lap, and you'd lead every single lap as well. I think that was his 7th Grand Slam, I think. I mean, his times during the second stint, which I'm going to put over here or over here, can't remember which side, they were on average, his lap times on average were 7/10 faster than Perez and Sainz, and over a second a lap faster than the other top runners, so the Mercedes and Leclerc. There's some good battles behind, so there's a good bit of swapping of positions, wasn't there, with Sainz making those moves on Russell and Leclerc, but there was no change in the podium places from lap 18 onwards, so I can't really assign it a better score than that. I tend to give my race scores based on what happens at the front, the main plot I call it. If there's no jostling for positions for podium places, then I tend to give races a low score. My scoring system's odd, but it makes sense to me, and that's the most important thing. What have I said? Lance Stroll had a good recovery. Did I cover that earlier? I feel like I covered that earlier. Just finished one place behind his teammates and in the points. Just 1 point, but in the points nonetheless. Zhou had a very strong race as well, finishing 11th. He benefited from an early pit stop during the first stint, which allowed him to undercut a few fellas. And I think gives Sauber a bit of an interesting dilemma for their own driver market for next year. Of course, you've got Bottas and Zhou at the moment, Bottas being a very experienced, very reliable driver. Zhou can put in a good result here and there, here and then, now and then. Yeah. You got Porsche as well. So he's already been touted as one of the drivers for the next generation. But during the support package, another one of the Sauber junior drivers, academy drivers, Zane Maloney's done the double in F2. So it looks as if you've got 4 contenders going in for 2 seats. So, half the contenders are going to be disappointed. Interesting to see where they go with that. And I think that will do it for my notes for the Bahrain Grand Prix. So my overall feelings so far for the 2024 season is there's been absolutely no change in the driver market. So all the drivers who finished the 2023 season are in the same seats for 2024, and without any major change in the form book. I've said that 2024 just feels like a continuation of 2023. So we're going to see Max win 20 odd races in a year, which is insane. So he's going to end up with 70 odd career victories by the end of the season. Nothing against Max, but I hopefully I'm proved wrong. I'd like there to be a tight championship. I don't care who wins. As long as it's a tight championship, I'll be happy. And that is me done, yes. So if you want to subscribe, all that usual stuff, leave comments about what you thought of the race, what you expect the driver market to look like for next year. And I shall catch you after the next race, the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, which is another Saturday race. It's Ramadan on the 10th. Yes, the 10th. So the race will be on Saturday the 9th. Cool. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon.